US President Donald Trump is meeting his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, for a first one-on-one summit that's taking place in Helsinki in Finland. The historic meeting is being hosted by the Finnish President. Trump has so far blamed tensions with Russia on US politicians. He says relations with Russia have never been worse. Well, let's give you a preview to this big event. Our US correspondent Simon Marks, currently working in Johannesburg. Simon, a very good afternoon to you. I'm going to start off with a quote. You're going to love this one. Rarely has a presidential summit between the United States and Russia been so badly needed, point one, yet so spectacularly undermined by timing and circumstance. That kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Well, I think it does. I mean, you have to bear in mind, and this meeting now is underway. President Trump arrived at the venue in Helsinki within the last few minutes. He's been kept waiting for about 45 minutes by the Russian President Vladimir Putin in kind of characteristic Putin behavior.
Political gamesmanship.
No question about it. Absolutely. The Russians know exactly what they're doing in that regard. Look, this summit is happening because Donald Trump said, I want this meeting. And his advisors within the National Security Council and within the State Department all said, it's a crazy idea. Don't do it. He has overruled them. There is no clear agenda for this meeting. There's been very little preparatory work done by the lower level officials within either the American or Russian governments. And most of the meeting, in fact, potentially all of it, may be just the two men alone with their interpreters. And that's seriously worrying to President Trump's national security team, because they worry that they're not going to be able to, in any sense, to control what he has to say. And his approach going into all of this, Jeremy, was characterized by a tweet that Donald Trump published last night, late last night here, South Africa time, in which he said, our relationship with Russia has never been worse thanks to many years of US foolishness and stupidity, and now the rigged witch hunt. What he means by the rigged witch hunt, of course, is the Robert Mueller investigation into whether the Russians did in fact seek to infiltrate and alter the outcome of the American presidential election in 2016. But just read that again. Thanks to many years of US foolishness and stupidity. Never mind Russia's annexation of Crimea, never mind Russia's attempt to interfere with America's democracy, never mind Russia's alleged use of nerve gas recently on the streets of the UK. And take a look at how the Russian government has responded to this tweet that Donald Trump put out. They have retweeted it. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Russia have retweeted Donald Trump's tweet with two words: we agree.
Another piece of analysis which leads on beautifully from that, it's curious that Trump often appears, I think this is the important bit, more in tune with Putin's views than that of his own government.
Well, look, the great mystery about Donald Trump, whether you love him or hate him, whether you're a supporter or a detractor, the great unexplained mystery about Donald Trump is, why is he so beguiled by Russian President Vladimir Putin and Russia more generally? He keeps insisting that he could just get along so well with Vladimir Putin if only this rigged witch hunt into whether there was any kind of collusion between his campaign and the Russians in 2016, if only that would go away. And he keeps insisting there was no collusion. Robert Mueller, the special prosecutor, keeps indicting people, including now scores of Russians, over 25 Russian officials and Russian entities indicted by Robert Mueller. Donald Trump was asked on CBS over the weekend, are you going to press Vladimir Putin to agree to extradite those Russian officials to face justice in the United States? The response from the President of the United States? I hadn't thought about that.
Here's another quote, which leads on directly from that. I go in, he says, I think this was after a round of golf at Turnberry, I go in with low expectations. I think that getting along with Russia is a good thing, but it's possible that we won't.
Well, and that's very, very similar to the cadence that he voiced as he was heading into that summit meeting with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. Very, very similar. Barely any preparation done for it. It was absolutely unclear what was going to come out of it. He insisted that he and Kim Jong-un, if they could only get together and look each other in the eye, they would find a way of getting along. What's happened since that summit meeting with North Korea? Well, the North Koreans have doubled down, it is alleged, on their nuclear program by intelligence agencies that say they can see absolutely no sign of denuclearization whatsoever. President Trump keeps insisting the threat, the nuclear threat from North Korea Korea is now a thing of the past. That is simply untrue. Will this meeting with Vladimir Putin give rise to any kind of advance in the US-Russian relationship? The entire foreign policy establishment in Washington, D.C. is very skeptical.
And
about
I
that.
suppose Putin goes into the summit on a roll, having hosted a very successful Football World Cup.
Very successful World Cup. He also goes into this summit on a roll because President Donald Trump heads to Helsinki from NATO and the UK. And the only thing that came out of those meetings was the deep strains that now exist in the traditional transatlantic relationship. Indeed, asked on American television last night, who was America's biggest foe right now on the world stage, Donald Trump's immediate response was, well, the European Union is a foe. That's an astonishing situation to be in, where you've got warmer relations with Kim Jong-un and maybe by the end of the day with Vladimir Putin than you've got with Theresa May, Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron and the Secretary General of NATO.
And hopefully a press briefing a little bit later.
2.5 hours' time, we think, depending on exactly when their meetings wrap up, and it's going to be fascinating to observe.
Okay, Simon Marks, thank you very much indeed. Now,